welcome back. This is day 2, week 4, day 23 in a row here that we're going with. And today we're going to go back to, we're going to do a little more WordPress exploration, basically. One of the things we want to do is look at the difference between posts and pages, but we're also going to do a sort of a quick tour through the menu, try to walk through that a little bit. We've had that in some of our notes, but it's probably not a bad thing at this point. You're getting some content together. You're getting some things, starting to get some things put together on your site. So since most of it's going to be pushing through WordPress, it probably doesn't hurt to get comfortable with it. Now, first thing is the dashboard. If you haven't played around with it, I definitely would. Note that you've got with each of these little widgets, you can hide them, but you can also customize it so you can like drag them around. So I can do that. And you can also go to your screen options. You can actually drop some of those boxes. They call them boxes, but basically your widgets. So if I wanted to add the welcome, hey, I've got my welcome, and that's going to give you some of your things there, but I don't want that anymore. I can do, WordPress events and news. So I can see what's coming up there. But I can also drop it and then it just disappears. Quick draft's nice if you want to jump on something really quick and throw a draft together. This is actually not a bad thing at all because it's particularly if you have like a quick idea of, oh, I want to do a post on, such and such on the color blue in cars today, whatever it is just, throw together a quick title and throw a couple sentences down, because as you get into wanting to get a true social schedule, as we've talked about, and actually get some of this stuff, content on a regular basis, get it out there, get it pushed in front of your community, then you're going to want to have essentially a backlog of topics. You're going to want to be able to sit down and, if you're writing, let's say, one a week, when you sit down to do it, you probably want to have a list of 4 or 5 things to, to hit as your topic for that week. Otherwise, it's going to be that much harder, because if you sit down cold and just say, okay, now I'm going to write, usually crickets are going to be heard at that point, because it's going to take you a little bit to figure it out and get in the right mood and stuff like that. And you may luck out, but writer's block is a real thing. So, I would recommend that you build a couple of, build a backlog of topics, even if it's just the most basic, like a title or just a very generic thing, just enough for you to say, because you may be out driving your car or, sitting there in the middle of work or doing something, and, an idea comes to you, jot it down. And if you've got access, go ahead and do a quick draft. I mean, you may even throw a paragraph or two together, and the next thing you may have half dozen articles floating around that are, some percentage of the way done, or at least started, so that it makes it that much easier when you sit down to write, that you can sit down and write and be off and running. You may want to check your activity, just to see sort of what's coming up. What have you got scheduled? What have you recently published and things like that. You're definitely going to see these recent comments, depending on how you've got stuff set up. You may get a lot, you may get a few, but over time, what's going to happen is you will get some that are spam, that are things that are just, like here, misconceptions and facts, lies and truth about the business of modeling. The logic of the marketplace today makes your trueness change, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and basically what you can see is with the spam is they're usually going to have like a link there, or they may have something like this, free piano, things like that make it pretty obviously spam. If they've got an IP address that's sort of scary, or if they've got a weird little domain, that kind of stuff. Go ahead and just mark it spam, and then that will help the system track that down for the future, and then it's not going to show up anywhere. Once you see stuff that's good, you can go ahead and approve it. If you do links within an article back to another article on your site, you're going to get these ping back kind of things, and what they're going to do is you'll see like this one in particular is, I don't know why that's approved. That should not have been. But you'll see here, like the pingback is developernoir.com, and we're looking at the developernoir.com site. So you'll see that these are just going back to it. Those you can go and accept because those are just basically you linking to your own site. Probably want to check some of the stats kind of things. There's a bunch of different ways you can play around with those, but it never hurts to have just sort of highlight of what's going on. You may want to do what's going on today, what's real time. Some of these are not terribly great as far as being current. So, you may want to do a refresh on the page, things like that. You may have some statistics that you want to deal with some of your plugins. Things like the Yoast always will do its little scores as far as your posts, how many are good, how many are okay, how many are not. And then they can do this analyze your entire site, which basically is going to take you to another site to basically register it, and it'll go through and they'll check your site, much like we did with GT metrics when we looked at that, much like we've done with Screaming Frog also does that kind of stuff. They don't do it, they analyze it slightly differently, but 6 one, half dozen the other. We have talked about plugins. You want to check those regularly, especially if you got your little badge there. Take a look if there's some updates that you want to do. Ideally what you want to do is you're going to want to actually come in, do a backup of your database and your site, and then do your updates just to be safe. There are plugins that will automatically do that backup for you, that will do daily backups, do it on demand, things like that. And again, if you want to look for those, then all you'd have to do is say add new. And then, like for example, if I want to do backup, I'm going to see that there's a whole bunch of different backups there, like backup and restore. Dropbox, Jetpack has got a backup to it. WordPress backup and migration plugin, backup guard. I mean, it's just, you'll have whatever it is, you're going to probably have more than a few plugins floating around. So make sure you keep those up to date. As you see here, there's some others like Crazy Egg and some of these that have popped up because I've got those plugins in. So your sidebar there may look a little bit different. It's going to depend on what you have. You can go crazy with plugins. Even here I've got 21 active, which is a lot in a sense. Some of these are all like, I've got a couple of these that are all sort of groups of plugins related to sort of one focus. Like for example, speeding up the site. I've got some plugins related to that. But typically you don't want to go too nuts because the more you have a possibility that you're going to have conflicts, that you're going to have things go down, that you're going to have issues on upgrades, that you're going to have conflicts between the two plugins, that they do things weird. For example, Yoast and Jetpack, I've run into a couple of problems with that over the months and years that we've been doing this. So that's why I don't actually use Jetpack, even though that's the default. I think it's automatically on your site if you go to WordPress.org. A couple other sites like that where they'll do, you get basically like if you go Bluehost or one of those places, that stuff's basically built in from scratch. They go Jetpack instead of Yoast. I actually like Yoast. So, and the two, like I said, don't really work together. So, pick one. And if you start having, if you are looking at plugins, try to do do one and then maybe a week later do another, something like that, so that you have some time to get a little bit of, let those things bake in a little bit in case there are conflicts. So, if you add 5 plugins at once and suddenly you start having issues with your site, it could be a conflict of some sort, but then you're going to have to really, dig down into log files and things like that to try to figure it out. It's just the less you change, the easier it is to track it down. We've talked about appearance, and that's definitely an area that you're going to want to mess around with it. Pick yourself a theme and customize it. Go in there, get your look, get your logos, your colors. Play around look at the widgets that are provided, especially as you start adding plugins. And of course, every theme is going to have slightly different options here over on the side as far as what you can change and how you can change it. Let me go back here. Widgets, definitely take a look at all of these widgets that are in there, and as you add new plugins, take a look, because some of them will add stuff. Like for example, I've got a MailChimp widget that I think came in from one of the MailChimp plugins that I added. As you get new versions of WordPress that come out, Sometimes you're going to see some new widgets show up there. The video was one that added somewhere along the way. I think there's a few others in here that have, over the last few years as we've done this, that it's sort of it slowly gets expanded. And you can take some, you can take some that you don't like, you can pull them off. So if you don't like stuff filling up your home page, go ahead and pull some of those off, whether it's whether it's in the footer or off to one of the sidebars, whether it's center, right, however you're going to set it up. And play around with what those look like so that when you're looking at your site, that like for example, that this is the one sidebar of widgets, and so I know that that's what they look like, and that's about how far they go down. So I can go through those and say, oh well, maybe I don't want to have this section, or maybe I don't want to have categories looking like that. Like for example, here you don't necessarily get them all linked. You could have it as a drop down. You don't need to show how many articles exist per category, some things like that. So play around with that, get comfortable with it. You can look at restrictions. You can go in and you can set up your users, you can set up roles and things like that. We've talked about that in the articles enough that if you really want to do it, I recommend you do that, or Google it or something like that. We aren't going to cover it very much in this course. There are also plugins that allow you to get even further granularity on your security. So if you really want to secure your site and have a model in mind, then take a look at what's out there, because WordPress may or may not support it out of the box, and if not, there's probably some plugins that do. Now, a big difference thing I do want to point out is your pages versus your posts. Is your pages, and you can sort of use them interchangeably on the site, but you're going to find that some menus are going to be page friendly, or they're more likely to pull a page, and some are more likely to pull a post. And there is some slightly different formatting that's depending on what your theme is on pages versus posts. Also, if you go to your settings, you can go through there, and I believe it is, and of course I didn't have it right. Yeah, so if you go to settings, you go to the reading menu, then you can play around with your home page. It may be your latest post, which is what we see here, or you could actually set it to a page. So you could actually create a home page, and then you could separately have maybe a post page. And what you may want to do there is that then instead of doing it like we see here, where you see this on a lot of sites where you're just going to see, oh, I've got a bunch of posts going on. Well, you may want to do, like a little section here that shows some posts, but over here is maybe some news. Down here is maybe some general about us, things like that. You can actually play around with it. And as we referred to it in the past, we talk about this occasionally in our mentoring group as well. We talk about a marketing site versus your blog site. Well, the marketing site is really just marketing type information. So it's, who am I? What's my business? What do we do? Those kind of things. And you see that in a lot of places where it's, primarily a marketing site, but then they'll have a menu item that'll be their blog, and you can go to the blog and, read whatever it is they've been blogging on. Well, you could do the same thing, and you can do that all within WordPress. You would do that with pages as your, essentially your marketing pages, and then you go into blog posts, and those would actually be on your blog, because it does treat blog posts slightly differently. For example, an RSS feed is going to get your blog posts. It's not going to get your pages. So you wouldn't want to put posts, as pages, and honestly, you wouldn't really want to have pages as posts either. I mean, unless it's a and really then you don't want to anyways. And I was going to say, unless it was something that was, cornerstone content, as I call it. But if you note, let me just pick a random one. If you look down there in your posts, down here, it will actually ask you if you want it to be cornerstone content somewhere down here or all the way at the top. Somewhere it allows you to do that. And now, honestly, I can't find it because I'm looking for it. But basically, what it is at that point, if it is Cornerstone content, then it's going to treat it slightly differently. Those are the things where it's like, probably your top 3 to 6 posts, maybe, or reasons why people would come there. Things like that. If there's like a specific, like for example, if you've got a course that you're selling, then maybe that about the course page would be one of your cornerstone contents. And it's like I said, it's going to treat that a little bit differently. That means it's just going to be that much more likely it's going to show up. It's going to hit searches and things like that. I don't want to go too deeply into that at this point. It's really just to note that if you have 1 or 2, 3, 4 articles that you put together that are, summing up your business, your site, go ahead and mark those as such. And also, you can link directly to posts just like you can pages. So, maybe make sure that you've got those as, some articles out there that, so if somebody hits your site, that's going to be pretty easy for them to navigate to it. Now, we're, as you've seen, we're just getting started. There's a lot out there on WordPress, and particularly when you start looking at the plugins. So, I think I just challenge you at this point, get to know the basic ones, the plugins that you've already got, get comfortable with them and how to use them. And if you don't use them, deactivate them and delete them. Go ahead and get them off your machine. Same thing with themes. Get yourself a theme that you like, and then go ahead and delete all the other themes. Now, deleting a theme is not super easy. You have to actually go to your server and delete it. So you want to make sure that you've got the right name. And for example, if you go to mine, I forget what the name of my theme was, but what you will find if you go into your root directory, and then there's going to be there's this WP-content folder, which I'm not sure why. Oh, because I'm not part of that group, I guess. Let's just do it this way. Oops. And in there you can see, hopefully you can see here, let's blow this up a little bit. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit so we can see it. And then what you'll see here is you'll see that there's a themes folder inside of WP content. At that point, what you'll see is here's all of your theme names. So for example, I can do an RM-RF 20. I can actually do any one of them. So I'll do a 20 star, and that'll get rid of those 3 themes, the 2015, 2017, and 2016. And then I would want to go in and delete some of these others, because there's going to be, you're basically, when you're done, you should have essentially an index.php and then your one theme, which I think is Hesty in my case, but it may be tiny. But in any case, I'm not going to clean it all up at this point, because what that does is that just gets some junk off your machine, keeps it a little bit, it frees up a little bit of space, potentially decent amount of space, because there's going to be images and stuff like that. And again, just generally speaking, keeps the whole thing running a little smoother. You just have less stuff floating around on your server, which is always a good thing to do, is keep it simple as possible. That's going to do it for this time. This is one of those that definitely is just a starter type class, but I think that's one of the things you want to look at occasionally, is to, keep up. Even if you spend a few minutes a week playing around with WordPress, you'll find yourself to be a master of it in pretty much no time. It's not that hard to learn. It's just really getting used to the navigations and the plugins and things like that. That will do it for today. So go out, have yourself a great day, and we will talk to you tomorrow.